PR Connections Radio presents.
Welcome to Vegas Hockey Hub here on PRConnectionsRadio.com, the voice of new media. I'm your host, Ian McKelly. And on this edition of Vegas Hockey Hub, we are here in Season 3. And man, this is a brand new season, brand new episode. And that means that we have, for the second year in a row, our 2024-2025 NHL season preview. Now, how we are going to be doing this and how it's going to be done on Vegas Hockey Hub with your host, Ian McKelly, on PRConnectionsRadio.com, the voice of new media, is that we are going to go division by division by division, and we're going to talk about where I see these standings going. So 1 through 8 in the Atlantic, 1 to 8 in the Metro, 1 to 8 in the Pacific, and 1 to 8 in the Central. And I will give you some insight. I'll give you an outlook into what I see the standings being like as we do our prediction. You know, very similar to what we did the past season before when we did our off-season, our preseason preview to kick off the Season 2. We're doing that once again for Season 3 of Vegas Hockey Hub. Now, very quickly, go to www.PRConnectionsRadio.com, the voice of new media. Check out all of the amazing content we have on the network. We have over a dozen shows on the platform, including Vegas Hockey Hub. So I highly recommend going to our website and checking out all the programming on there. Also, go to our social media pages at Vegas Hockey Hub or follow me right down there at Ian J. Kelly. So with this being the 2024-2025 NHL season preview, we're going to go from the bottom up. So essentially, we'll go from who I think will be last in the division and then go 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we're going to go to the Eastern Conference, and we're going to start this out with the Atlantic Division. And with the Atlantic Division, it is going to start out with arguably the worst team here. I really don't see a lot of impact happening with this organization, and that is this team right here, the Montreal Canadiens. The Montreal Canadiens, this is an organization that has Cole Caulfield, you have Nick Suzuki, you traded for Patty Laine, but my issue with Montreal and how they really should be looked at is that this is a Montreal Canadiens team that lacks depth. This is an organization that has a few good pieces, and they have some good parts all around. But in terms of the coaching, in terms of management, in terms of front office, I do not trust Montreal to be anything more than a bottom feeder in the Atlantic Division. More importantly, when it comes to the Montreal Canadiens organization, what I see happening here is that you are going to be very similar to last year. You're going to be an organization that is just stuck in neutral for majority of the year. Nick Suzuki will be good. I promise you that. Cole Caulfield, he'll get you some goals, sure. But when you study the Montreal Canadiens, I really don't trust them anywhere near playoff caliber. And I have them as the worst team in the Atlantic. The goaltending, a little bit suspect there. But Montreal at number 8. At number 7, and this is a surprise for some people, but I have the Tampa Bay Lightning in 7th place in the Atlantic. Now, the dynasty that Tampa Bay had all those years ago, yes, everyone's going to remember the back-to-back Stanley Cup champions. Yes, Andrei Vasilevsky being the amazing goaltender he was. The defense was solid and one of the best in all hockey. And then you had your core that was your top 6. But when you fast forward 4 years later, Tampa Bay no longer has what they did back then. And let me explain what I mean by that. This is a Tampa Bay Lightning team where your goaltending, you're going to have to count on so much of production from Andrei Vasilevsky that this is going to be a season where the Tampa Bay Lightning are pretty much going to have to hope that Andrei Vasilevsky overextends himself and outperforms and be the elite goaltender he has been in previous years. Defensively, you have lost so much of your defense, losing Sergachev, losing all of these guys that you have had on your defense during the Stanley Cup run. In fact, if you want to face it defensively, Victor Hedman, really the only great defenseman that Tampa Bay has at this point. They have a few good ones underneath him, but Victor Hedman's the last great defenseman Tampa Bay has. And then in terms of forwards, you lose your face of the franchise. Steven Stamkos, he goes to Nashville. He gets paid there. And when you lose your captain, when you lose the guy that has been your number one marquee guy, it's going to affect you somewhat. Now, I have no doubt that Nikita Kucherov is going to perform. All right, he's going to be 100 points like he has been the past couple of years. But outside of your top line in Tampa Bay, I have a lot of question marks about your middle six. I wonder how your bottom six is going to perform. And because of that, I have the Tampa Bay Lightning missing the Stanley Cup playoffs. And I think that this is just going to be an organization that's going to take 2 steps back from what they were in the past, and that was a Stanley Cup championship contender. At number 6 in the Atlantic Division, this is an organization that has been the definition of neutral, and that is the Buffalo Sabres. The Buffalo Sabres are an organization that you bring in Lindy Ruff, which was a really solid choice, bringing him back to the organization. You have a good core players. You have Tage Thompson. You have Alex Tuck, Owen Power, Rasmus Dahlin. The Buffalo Sabres are on the right track. The issue is that we've been saying this for the last couple of years now. Every year that they miss the playoffs, we keep on saying the same phrase. They're on the right track. They're on the right track. Eventually, the Buffalo Sabres are going to have to show their actual progress. You know, this is a Buffalo Sabres team that, once again, has not made the playoffs since 2010. So, for the Buffalo Sabres organization, when you've missed the playoffs for that many years, you're going to get desperate. You're going to do Hail Mary attempts. And for Buffalo, I just do not see them as a playoff caliber team. So, for the Buffalo Sabres, they are going to be 6th in the Atlantic, going to miss the playoffs once again. But hey, you're taking steps in the right direction. You're on the right track. At number 5 in the Atlantic Division, I have the Ottawa Senators. This is an Ottawa Senators team that you bring over a elite quality goaltender in Linus Ullmark. They do add some additions on the forward side, and they did beef up the defense, which I do appreciate. The issue that I see with the Ottawa Senators, and the reason why I have them slotted at number 5, is that because you are in a stacked Atlantic Division. Don't get me wrong, if they were in the Metro Division, I actually think Ottawa would be a little bit placed higher. But because you are in the Atlantic Division, this is currently where you're going to be slotted at. But the good news for Ottawa Senators fans, and I want everyone to hear me here, you are going to be the second wild card, okay? The Ottawa Senators, for the first time in years, I have you placed as a wild card team in the Atlantic Division. So that is good news for the Ottawa Senators. You are going to be my wild card, my second wild card pick when it comes to the 2024-2025 NHL season. And at number 4, the team I have with the first selection and the first wild card is going to be this team right here, and that is the Detroit Red Wings. Now, you were just a smidge close to being the 8th seed last year. You missed by just the hair of a smidge. Well, good news is Steve Yzerman, he has brought back some of the core, re-signing Lucas Raymond. That was a good move there. You've locked up your future. You have your young core. The goaltending is a bit suspect. I'm not going to say that it's not. However, if there is a Detroit Red Wings team that has made enough progress and has made enough moves this offseason to go from being just 1 decimal off from being a playoff team to being the first wild card in the Eastern Conference, It would be this organization right here in the Detroit Red Wings. So for Detroit, I have you as our first wild card team, and that is the reality. That's the situation there. Detroit Red Wings, Steve Yzerman, that organization, your first wild card in the Eastern Conference. Now, the top three, the big dogs in the Atlantic Division. At third spot, you have your reigning defending Stanley Cup champion, and that is the Florida Panthers. Now, this is going to be a Florida team that's going to try to repeat, a Florida team who's going to want to execute and make it back to the promised land like they just did a few months ago. You have your core members. Matthew Tkachuk is still there. You have your solid defense. Gustav Forsling has done an amazing job there. And then as long as you have an elite goaltender in Sergei Bobrovsky, the Florida Panthers are going to be a playoff caliber team. You're going to make it back to the big dance. It's going to be interesting to see what they do come Stanley Cup playoff time, because the last 2 seasons, they have been the best of the best in the Eastern Conference. Now, I do understand that they did lose some depth in the offseason. All right, it's a Stanley Cup tax. It happens almost every year. You win a Stanley Cup, you lose certain players. Losing OEL to Toronto, that's going to be a little bit of a loss there. But overall, with Florida, they had some depth losses, but you have your core members there. You're still the Stanley Cup champions, and you are going to be making the playoffs this upcoming year in the Atlantic Division. And the top 2 in the Atlantic, I'm actually going to surprise some people here. The second seed in the Atlantic, I have the Boston Bruins. Remember, this is a Boston Bruins team that 2 years ago was your President's Trophy winner. This is a Boston Bruins team that 1 year ago was arguably one of the best quality teams in the NHL. They advanced to the second round of the playoffs before losing to Florida in that situation. Now, the goaltending is going to be your biggest question mark. You lose Linus Ullmark. He goes to Ottawa. You trade him away. And the Jeremy Swayman situation, of course, we've all known what's been going on there this entire offseason. But more importantly, when it comes to the Boston Bruins, despite the goaltending situation, one fact you cannot deny about them is that when the Boston Bruins play as a unit, they are, without a doubt, the best performing team in hockey. Where the Boston Bruins get their points is by having a physical team, having guys like Charlie McAvoy on your defense, having guys on the forwards like David Pastrnak, who's going to score almost every single game and then some more on top of that. This is a Boston Bruins organization that, despite the goaltending situation, the rest of the team is locked up pretty well. They made some small moves to beef up the bottom 6 this offseason, and I can appreciate what Boston has done. So the Boston Bruins being the number 2 seed in the Atlantic, this makes a lot of sense when you understand the roster makeup and what they have done this offseason. Boston Bruins, second best team in the Atlantic. But who's the first team? Well, before we get to the first team, I just want to very quickly go over who the teams have been up to this point. At number 8 is the Montreal Canadiens. This is an organization that is just in disarray. They have some parts here and there, but they do not have a full roster. At number 7, the Tampa Bay Lightning, a Stanley Cup champion all those years ago, a dynasty that is starting to slowly fade away with all the people that they've lost. At number 6, the Buffalo Sabres, a team that's on the right track, and they have some core members, but a Buffalo Sabres team that just does not have enough to make the playoffs in 2024, 2025. At number 5 in the Atlantic, I have a team being the second wild card in the Eastern Conference, and that will be the Ottawa Senators, acquiring an elite goaltender in Linus Ullmark, and the players that they have beefed up and gotten over the past year and a half will help them be a playoff caliber team. The first wild card in the Eastern Conference and the 4th best in the Atlantic will be the Detroit Red Wings. You missed the playoffs by just a smidge last year. You've made enough moves in the offseason to be a playoff caliber team. In third place, you have the Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers. You did lose some of your defense, but as long as you have one of the best goalies in Sergei Bobrovsky, you're going to be okay. And then at number 2, we just talked about them, the Boston Bruins. So, the number 1 team in the Atlantic, for the people who know me, this should not surprise you. For the people who do not know me, let me explain to you why the Toronto Maple Leafs are going to be the best team in the Atlantic next year. This is going to be a Toronto Maple Leafs team that your core 4 is on its last leg. This is a core 4 in Matthews, Marner, Nylander, and Riley, who statistically have been among the best in all of hockey. Austin Matthews is a top 5 player in the league. Nylander is a guy who can shoot the puck and get points over and over and over again. That Mitch Marner has been consistently a top 20 player in the league and is one of the best 2A players in the NHL. Him and Draisaitl have been that way for the longest time. And then Morgan Riley, your face of the defense, if you did not have him, you would not be able to have your defense the way it is. So, why do I have Toronto at number 1? Well, here's 3 reasons why the Toronto Maple Leafs will be the number 1 team in the Atlantic Division. Reason A, they beefed up their defense. Going out and getting Chris Tanev from the Dallas Stars, excellent move by Toronto. Then they go out and get OEL, Oliver Ekman-Larsson, a Stanley Cup champion from the Florida Panthers. This is a veteran. This is an all-star. And the Toronto Maple Leafs bring him in, and they have him beef up the defense. So, overall, the Toronto Maple Leafs beefing up that defense and not making it just Morgan Riley and 5 other faces, that helps out Toronto. So, beefing up your defense, reason number 1. Reason number 2 is that you've made your middle 6 better. You know, having Max Domi is solid for the Toronto Maple Leafs. I like what they have done in terms of having John Tavares be a middle 6 forward now. They know what his ceiling is. They know how many amount of goals he's going to score, and he knows what his role is at this point. And then lastly, when it comes to Toronto Maple Leafs organization, getting rid of Sheldon Keefe is a fantastic move by Toronto Maple Leafs. Getting rid of a head coach who I believe was holding you back is going to make Toronto reach its full potential. I am a fan of who they brought in to be their head coach. Are you kidding me? He won a Stanley Cup in St. Louis. This is somebody who, when you really study and look at what he has done, is a Toronto Maple Leafs organization that bringing in a Stanley Cup winning champion as a head coach, he's going to elevate the organization. So, for the Toronto Maple Leafs, I sit here and I tell you that bringing in an established head coach, beefing up the defense, and helping out the middle 6, that is going to take so much pressure off of your core 4. So, for the Toronto Maple Leafs, they're going to be your number 1 team in the Atlantic Division for the 2024-2025 season. Now, getting back to me here, hi, this is your host, Ian Kelly on PR Connections Radio on Vegas Hockey Hub. So, when you see the 2024-2025 NHL season preview, and you see that I have 5 teams coming out of the Metro, right? So, you have these 5 teams here. You have Toronto, you have Boston, you have Florida, you have Detroit, and you have Ottawa. But that was in the Atlantic. What about the Metro, right? What will the Metro division look like? If I have 5 teams making the playoffs coming out of the Atlantic division, what is the Metro division going to look like? Well, here on Vegas Hockey Hub with your host, Ian Kelly, this is going to be the order from 8 to 1 of what the Metro division is going to look like in 2024-2025. And starting out with an organization that I feel so bad for, let's talk about the Columbus Blue Jackets. Now, first off, we have to get this out of the way. Rest in peace to Johnny and Matthew Gaudreau. What happened a little over a month ago was sad. It was heartbreaking. the whole hockey world was saddened by the loss of the Goodrow brothers. And for the Columbus Blue Jackets to have this happen to them, to lose their superstar and really their face of the franchise in Johnny Gaudreau, it's just a gut punch to a team that has really been trying to find their identity for a while. And this is a Columbus Blue Jackets organization that tried to make some pieces and try to add some stuff around this past offseason. But man, just the losing of Johnny Gaudreau, that is going to be such a hard thing to overcome for the Columbus Blue Jackets. So unfortunately, I have the Columbus Blue Jackets at number 8 in the Metro Division. At number 7, we're going to go to a team that did make the playoffs last year, but this is someone who you have a GOAT, you have someone who so many people look up to in Alex Ovechkin, but you have an aging roster. And that's the core issue with the Washington Capitals. This is a team that has lost so much of their talent, and yet they keep bringing in older guys, and they keep bringing aging veterans back into the organization. You have Alex Ovechkin, you have Nicholas Backstrom, you have John Carlson, but this is a Washington Capitals team that continues to get older. They're really not bringing in anybody new. I like the addition of Logan Thompson, but to me, Logan Thompson is not enough to have the Washington Capitals be a playoff caliber team. The only spotlight the Washington Capitals are going to have this year is how many goals Alex Ovechkin is going to score this year. Besides that, there's not many positives I can say about the Washington Capitals. They're at number 7. And speaking of aging teams that continue to get older, at number 6, we have the Pittsburgh Penguins. You extended Sidney Crosby. You brought him back at $8.7 million, but you still have Malkin. You still have Letang. You traded for Erik Karlsson last year. Similar to the Washington Capitals, this is a Pittsburgh Penguins team that Kyle Dubas, he's trying his hardest to make this team work, but the previous regime made so much of a mess before Kyle Dubas got there that I really doubt that the Pittsburgh Penguins organization is going to be able to overcome those mistakes. It's going to take a while for Pittsburgh to really get undone from what happened in the previous regime before Kyle Dubas got there. So unfortunately for the Pittsburgh Penguins, you're going to be an average-looking team this year, and I have you at number 6. At number 5, a team that has promise, but I don't like the talent makeup, and more importantly, I think the roster itself, there isn't many positives here, and we're talking about the New York Islanders. You have Ilya Sorokin, arguably one of the best goaltenders in the NHL right now, but defensively, there is some question marks there. In terms of the offense, I wonder who is going to be your 2 goal scorers for the New York Islanders. I could kind of assume that Matthew Barzal is going to be one of them, but who else is it going to be? Is it going to be Anders Lee? Is it going to be someone like Brock Nelson? Is there someone on that organization that's going to step up for the New York Islanders and make them a playoff caliber team and get into the wild card? I just don't see it. Adding Patrick Waugh as your head coach, him getting his second chance after being fired from Colorado all those years back. But I see a New York Islanders team that's once again going to be an average-looking team. You're going to be around the 80-point mark to begin this season. But New York Islanders, I just do not see you being a playoff caliber team. So at number 5 in the Metro, missing the playoffs, is the New York Islanders. And at number 4, an organization that has been making good strides, all right? An organization that you can really look at and say that this is a team that has gotten younger. This is an organization that has really done a lot of solid stuff, is the Philadelphia Flyers. No longer are they burdened with terrible contract on top of terrible contract. No longer are they suffering with certain or certain players on their team. Now, the only issue I have with Philadelphia and why they're not a playoff team is the goaltending. I do question losing Carter Hart due to the scandal that happened with the Team Canada and that situation with the World Juniors. Carter Hart was part of that. So how's the goaltending going to fare in terms of the Philadelphia Flyers? That's really the biggest question mark that is holding me back from making them a playoff caliber team. But they're going to make some good strides. I see them being probably around 88, 90 points on the year, and they're just going to barely miss the playoffs. Now, your top three teams and teams that are going to make the playoffs in the Metro, we're going to start this out with the third seed, and that will be the Carolina Hurricanes. The Carolina Hurricanes, they have done enough in the last 5 years to make the playoffs, but unfortunately, they are in a situation where you're good enough to make the playoffs, but are you good enough to win a cup? And sadly, over the last couple of years, the answer has been a resounding no. You have not been good enough to make a Stanley Cup. You're not good enough to win a Stanley Cup, but you're good enough to get to the show. So, for Carolina, you didn't really do much this offseason. You kind of moved some parts around, but with this kind of being a similar roster to last year, you made the playoffs last year, so congratulations, you are going to be a playoff caliber team. At number 2, this is an organization where I really don't know how to describe you except for massive question mark. And let me define what I mean by massive question mark. You have the talent to win a Stanley Cup. You have the potential to win a Stanley Cup. The question is going to be, can you finally break through and can you finally execute on that potential? You have 3 great defensemen, okay? You actually have a very good middle 6 to help out with the top 6. Your goaltending, Igor Shesterkin, one of the best in all of hockey. But I need to know, are the New York Rangers finally going to execute and get the job done? I have them at number 2 because there is one team that has done very well in this offseason, and they have elevated themselves to the best of the Metro. But before we get to that, before we break down them, let's go over the Metro one more time here on Vegas Hockey Hub. So at number 8, we have the Columbus Blue Jackets. Unfortunately, this is an organization that's dealing with tragedy and dealing with the loss of Johnny Gaudreau. I really see that being an unfortunate setback that the Columbus Blue Jackets are going to deal with all season long. Number 7 will be the Washington Capitals. Aging core, Alex Ovechkin trying to break Gretzky's record. That's about it for you. At number 6, you have the Pittsburgh Penguins. You have a bunch of aging veterans, and you have a lot of pieces from the old era that are still around. At number 5, you have the New York Islanders. This is a team that is kind of just in neutral right now, and bringing a new coach in Patrick Waugh. We'll see how that fits for you. At number 4, Philadelphia Flyers. They've gotten some good strides. They've made some good stuff happen. But the question you need to ask yourself is, can the goaltending get them into the playoffs? At number 3, the Carolina Hurricanes organization. You're a playoff caliber team, but I don't think you're a Stanley Cup caliber team at this point in time. At number 2, New York Rangers. You need to meet up with your expectations at this point. And then the number 1 team in the Metro, I have the New Jersey Devils. This is an organization that has finally done something right. They were aggressive in the offseason. They have made some good quality moves in terms of adding some goaltending. They got some depth on the bottom 6. And you have locked up your core, and you have your 4 members for the next 5 years. So, the New Jersey Devils as the Metro best. And when it comes to the playoffs, my prediction for the Eastern Conference is not only will the New Jersey Devils meet the Toronto Maple Leafs in the Eastern Conference Finals, but I have, for the first time in nearly 30 years, the Toronto Maple Leafs advancing to the Stanley Cup Finals and being your representative from the Eastern Conference. And this was the Eastern Conference edition of our 2024-2025 NHL season preview. This is Vegas Hockey Hub. I'm your host, Ian Rakelli. Stay tuned for tomorrow, because tomorrow will be the Western Conference edition of our season preview here on Vegas Hockey Hub. And until next time, continue watching hockey, go support junior hockey, and go Knights, go.
PR Connections Radio thanks you for watching this podcast. Check out more episodes of this show and our others at prconnectionsradio.com.